So I'm going to talk with you today about waste, fraud, and abuse in human services, and this is taken from a longer piece which was written for this Illinois Budget Policy Toolbox, and if you're interested in further details, that's a good resource. Illinois, like other states, has a number of welfare programs, human service programs. Some of these are Medicaid, food stamps, and the child care subsidy program. And the idea that there's a lot of undeserving recipients or fraudulent recipients in these programs is a popular, long-standing one. Of course, it's a laudable goal to want to run programs efficiently, which means you want to attain your program goals at a low cost. It's often asserted by you see this on editorial pages, and you hear this in political speeches, that there's all kinds of waste, fraud, and abuse in the social welfare programs, and that certainly seems to conform well with public opinion on that issue as well. That could be a potentially very important source of cost savings because 40% of state spending is in the human service programs. So it is very important to ask about the efficiency in the administration of these programs, and it's a potentially important question as to how much money could be liberated for other uses through human service program reforms that target waste, fraud, and abuse. We have some recent direct experience in this area. The state has embarked on a number of what I would call scrubbing projects, and that's basically you go and you examine every single person in a particular program. You start with the premise that perhaps they shouldn't be on the program, and let's prove that they should be on the program and receiving the benefits that they're getting. The premises for this strategy as a cost reduction strategy are that when you go to do this in a program, you'll find a lot of undeserving or fraudulent recipients. Also that these types of recipients are accounting for a large amount of the benefit payments that you're paying out. And of course also you're weighing the cost of auditing all these cases versus the gains from discovering all these benefits that shouldn't be paid out, so the assumption is also that investigations of this type are fairly cheap. Okay. As I said, we have particular experience with this strategy just last year, so this serves as kind of a case study for us. We can look at Governor Quinn's scrub of the Medicaid rolls in 2013. So this was, in 2014. It was proposed in 2013 as a means of saving about $120 million out of Medicaid. A contractor did the initial look at every single person, every single household that was receiving Medicaid in Illinois, and the rate at which they recommended case cancellations was about half. When state workers looked a little more closely, they still recommended that about a third of the cases maybe shouldn't be on Medicaid. So you would think that there would be substantial savings perhaps from then getting these people out of the system. However, there were some unexpected developments with when they went ahead and canceled cases. First, they found that very shortly a pretty substantial fraction of people came back on Medicaid. So 20% came back almost immediately, within about the amount of time it would take to turn the paperwork around, with more coming back as time went by. So, a lot of these people actually were closed out of Medicaid too quickly without enough information. Second of all, of the people who were turned out, few of them had been using Medicaid very much anyway. They weren't really the expensive cases. And many had not used any services, in fact, for 6 months or more. So they had basically already self-unenrolled themselves. considering the expense of looking at every single case in this detailed way, and then considering the rather disappointing benefit yields from that, and putting all those figures together, projected the state will net at most $50 million versus that initial $120 million that was hoped for. Okay, so you know, it's a very popular position that there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse on the part of recipients in programs. You know, we have actual experience with this, which suggests that these savings aren't as large as people might like to believe. So what could we do instead to help welfare programs, human service programs, run more cost effectively in the state? Using evidence from other states and from Illinois' past experience, the recommendations that I would put forward would be to first invest the greatest enforcement effort at the initial screening of people who are coming into programs for the first time. Try to develop processes to weed out people who are likely to commit fraud at the beginning. Secondly, and this is a long-standing issue in the state of Illinois, we still don't have information systems for human services that can be accessed by caseworkers across different programs. That kind of information sharing would help the state administer the programs much better. Thirdly, in Illinois, sadly, we often see that the types of entities that are abusing programs are vendors, that is, people contracting with the state to provide a human service to an individual, and that vendor abusers, or at least anecdotally, appear to often be political insiders. So we should have more scrutiny of the true risks of human service fraud, and that they don't come from the beneficiaries so much as they come from vendors. And finally, also with regard to vendors, there have been some proposals to implement wholesale state contracting reform. There have been some moves to reform state contracting, but things like the recent anti-violence program debacle is just yet another example of the types of problems that Illinois has had with human services contracting, and it appears to be very much an ongoing issue. And finally, I think I have one more slide. So where are we headed with this issue? You know, given our actual experience, we would think maybe this idea of scrubbing a program from top to bottom is becoming less popular, but that's certainly not true. In the gubernatorial campaign, Bruce Rauner recently has as a budget reduction platform plank that he'll find $250 million of savings through Medicaid verification reform, which is in fact what we just went through, and we found $50 million of savings. And also, Governor Quinn seems very committed to this idea of scrubbing programs, and has gone forward with a similar sort of audit strategy against state employees and retirees, also in an attempt to find people who maybe shouldn't be receiving benefits from the state.